before. So this could very well strengthen and strengthen a lot over the next 2 or 3 days. And this is the forecast path. As again, I think it'll stay offshore of the Dominican Republic, stay north of Cuba, will plow right through a lot of the Bahamas and be approaching southeast Florida by Friday morning. Now, once again, we're not sure how powerful this is going to get. We would not be one bit surprised to see it turn out to be a major hurricane, so we'll have to watch it very carefully indeed.
That's right, John. Thank you. One question for you, though, John. Even though it's a couple of days away from the southeast, folks should start to prepare at this point, don't you think?
They should indeed. They should know where the hurricane is, watch it very carefully. We'll be able to zero in on it as time goes by and give them a pretty good idea where we expect landfall of this hurricane. Now, suffice it to say, it's headed towards southeast Florida, and folks really need to watch it.
All right. Thank you, John Hope, our hurricane expert. Now let's go to the other side of the world here in the Western Pacific and talk about a super typhoon. This is Super Typhoon Bailis that moved over Taiwan, and I'm sure there's major devastation. A super typhoon winds 150 miles per hour, and it is heading towards China at this point. Now we have some footage here as it did move across Taiwan. Again, Typhoon Bailis slammed into Taiwan on Tuesday with raging winds that topped 160 miles per hour. Power was knocked out, several residents are stranded, and a construction worker was killed. Now, residents in Taipei were lining up at the supermarket counters for food, flashlights, and batteries in anticipation of shortages. And that may be something you may be thinking about in the southeast. So that wraps up the tropics. Now let's find out what's happening in the Midwest and Northeast with some severe weather. Here's Paul.
We're still seeing
All eyes are on Hurricane Debby as it churns towards the Bahamas, gaining strength. Now people in the Bahamas and in the Florida Keys are preparing for the worst. We'll have the very latest coming up.
Residents in Puerto Rico saw some high surf and rain as a result of Hurricane Debby, but it seems they dodged the hurricane bullet. We'll have the latest from there coming up.
And here in the U.S. Wednesday, Debby might be the focus as it centers somewhere north of eastern Cuba. Meanwhile, the best chance of rain will shift eastward into the Ohio Valley and into the New York City metro area by evening. And the heat continues from Texas up into the northern plains. More on your forecast is just ahead. Hi and welcome to this edition of Weather Center, sponsored by Daewoo Motor America. I'm Christina Abernathy.
And I'm Nick Walker. Thanks for joining us. We want to get the latest now on Hurricane Debby this half hour. A flash flood watch has been issued for all of Puerto Rico because of the possibility of more heavy rain. The focus is now shifting to the northwest, where hurricane warnings and watches are posted. And residents of the Florida Keys may get the order to evacuate by tomorrow morning. The latest statistics now on Debby. As of 7 p.m., 70 miles northwest of San Juan, Puerto Rico, winds of 75 miles an hour. So it's still a minimal hurricane, but it has slowed down its forward progress somewhat. Still moving toward the west-northwest, though, now 18 miles an hour with a pressure of 998 millibars. We have hurricane warnings for the north coast of the Dominican Republic, the Turks, the Caicos Islands, and the southeastern Bahamas. Hurricane watches for northern Haiti, the central Bahamas, and the northeastern coast of Cuba. Tropical storm warnings for the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Haiti north of Port-au-Prince. So we're continuing to monitor the effects of Hurricane Debby as it intensifies and continues on its path towards southern Florida. In fact, we have crews in both San Juan, Puerto Rico, and in Miami, Florida, as the hurricane churns through the Atlantic. Our own Jim Cantori is in Miami, and Mike Seidel has the latest from Puerto Rico. First up, Mike has more on the happenings in San Juan. Mike?
Tonight here in San Juan, Nick, we have some showers moving through and some locally gusty winds, 20, 25 miles an hour. But again, this island very fortunate. This time yesterday, it was looking a lot worse, certainly not as bad as George 2 years ago when we had almost $2 billion in damage. But, you know, if you live in Puerto Rico or you come down here, this time of the year, you have to take that kind of weather, tropical weather, all in stride. It's been a wait-and-see attitude here in San Juan today. For many people, it was just another day.
It was part of the, everyday life in Puerto Rico. Usually, people get confused. They go to the supermarket the day before, stuff like that. But it's a normal day, like regular day for us.
But there are those who are taking precautions. Residents and store owners boarded up windows, and some shops didn't even open. Government workers were given the day off, and the airport closed.
Got bumped from our flight 2 days ago, so we're just going to stay here until we can catch a flight. And that's it. We're going to enjoy the rest of it.
With flights canceled, hotels are filled to capacity, and management is closely watching the situation. 2 years ago, many hotels in San Juan were damaged by Hurricane George. The eye of the hurricane passed about 15 miles southwest of San Juan. Winds gusted over 90 miles per hour, and electricity was knocked out for most of the island. Although the winds gusted to about 90 miles an hour here in San Juan officially at the airport, some spots on the island had gusts over 150 miles an hour. Here with Debby, we may get a gust to 40 or 45 miles an hour, so a far cry from the devastation of George just 2 years ago. Nick?
All right, thank you very much. Mike Seidel reporting live from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Of course, we follow the path of Hurricane Debby now, and as it moves toward the Bahamas and perhaps eventually to the United States, we're keeping a close eye on it, as is our hurricane expert, John Hope. John, where's the next area that we need to be concerned?
Well, our main next area, I think, is up around the Turks and Caicos and into the central Bahamas. It's not very far from the north coast of the Dominican Republic either, and of course that area is under hurricane warnings. Right now, it looks as if the center is going to slip just north of there, but we don't want you folks along the coast of the Dominican Republic to relax your guard too much, not quite yet. Also, I want to point out that we have some converging feeder bands way to the southeast of this departing hurricane over the Virgin Islands around St. Thomas and St. Croix, and we're seeing some of the heaviest rain there that we have seen. In fact, flash flood warnings are out for St. Thomas and St. John's, not so much down to St. Croix. We don't see any real evidence yet that this hurricane is intensifying. The reconnaissance aircraft tells us it's not. It's 998 pressure unless we see a lower pressure than that, but we know it's not intensifying very much. We see a few signs that we're beginning to watch here, some dark red right around where we think the center is, and we're watching that very carefully. So far, the radar doesn't show us a well-defined eye wall, although the last couple of pictures here is kind of wrapped around just a little bit. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. Pretty soon we'll have another recon in there. But we did want to emphasize that we expect this to head up towards southeast Florida. Let me show you the forecast track here, and that's what we are mainly concerned about. As this moves up here, by Friday morning, it's going to be very close, we think, to the coast of Florida. In the meantime, it will have plowed through Turks, Caicos, and the Bahamas, so something to watch out for. It could be a bit stronger hurricane, a lot stronger than it is now. Nick?
So it's, suffice to say, it's probably a good idea if you live in Florida or anywhere along the east coast of the United States to start making preparations now.
Well, now's the time to take inventory, at least to know what you're going to do. If you might have to evacuate, you have to think about how you're going to do that. Put in supplies. You might want to do some of those long-awaited things that you would do in preparation for a hurricane before time runs out.
All right. Thank you very much, John Hope. Our own Jim Gantori now joins us live from Miami. He has the latest on what's going on there. Jim?
Nick, I can't possibly add more to what you and John were just talking about. You know, better safe than sorry. Make the preparations now. Think about where you want to go if you are going to evacuate and if you're asked to evacuate. I have a very interesting graphic I want to show you. And this is a graphic which has been put together by engineers, scientific engineers, on determining how much time it would actually take to evacuate South Florida given a certain category of hurricane. Let me show you that graphic here, and you can see what we're talking about here. Now, this is based on the category and also the hours. And there's a lot of things that go into this. I mean, think about Miami. You've got Key Biscayne. You've got, you know, special needs groups that need to be evacuated. You've got the barrier islands, and of course the heavy population in Dade County with only a couple of major routes northward and also westward. And these are the hours based on the storm category. And of course, the stronger the storm, the more hours this would take. And I do believe this is very, very recent data here, especially given the category 3, 4, and 5, the major hurricane of 52, 81, and 81 hours respectively. So, I mean, you know, given a word to the wise here, it would be wise to obviously plan that route tonight. But folks are well aware of hurricane territory. Unfortunately, as was with the case with George, that went over Puerto Rico and it went over the Dominican and stayed on a southern track. This one is already farther north than that, and it's progged to go even farther north. So certainly southeast Florida should be more cautious of this thing than they even were of George, given the fact that it could strengthen over those open waters. Let me show you some pictures around Miami-Dade today, as folks obviously well aware of Debby's presence and no doubt starting to stock up on things. The sheet metal, the plywood, the generators, the batteries, the flashlights, everything that you need to not only evacuate but also deal with loss of power even in your own home. And certainly tomorrow I would imagine we're even going to see a lot of these folks stepping it up, because you just never know when the next Andrew is going to make its way here. And definitely be prepared for that time. We'll keep you posted here from South Florida. Nick, back to you.
All right, good advice. Thanks so much, Jim. Jim Cantori reporting live from Miami. So